to infinity and beyond.
Hey everybody, Roger James here from Infinity and Beyond, presented by DisKingdom.com and DisKingdom.com. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Marvel Vs Capcom Infinite's kind of long-term plan, but also there's a little bit of information really about kind of like games as services, because there was a great article over at gamesindustry.biz where they talked to one of the head guys over at Marvel Games. His name was Jae-ung, and he, that's probably pronounced it badly, but he was talking about how, you know, Marvel's approach to video games has changed, and one of the things that was brought up in the interview was about Marvel vs. Capcom is going to be service. He said that it's this is not going to be everything out in the fall and that's the end of it. He said we haven't officially announced the roster, but they will be pleased with. And what we talked about earlier with the games as a service, we certainly expect Marvel vs. Capcom to be that. There's going to be content released over time. We're not seeing this as a one-off. This ships this fall. It's a service that is going on for years. Therefore, if you look at it, content and new characters are going to be dropped over time, and I think fans will be happy with what's going to be dropped, just not in September, but going on from there. So, following on from that, this follows what they did with Street Fighter V, where they released a game. They then released a season pass where they dropped characters every month or every 2 months. They then announced a second year of season pass. They've announced extra story details. The fact that the wording that the guys there for Marvel has best said that this Marvel vs. Capcom is going to be adding content for years, which on one hand I think is great. But on the other hand, it's like, we're coming up to get Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite in 3 years, 2 in 3 years' time. But definitely interesting to see that they want to go down this service line for Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. You definitely predicted that this was kind of their intention with it, is to set it up as a long-term game, more in line with something like Contest of Champions or Marvel Heroes or something like that, where you get more and more heroes over time. For me, we talked about it last week, having played the demo, both of us. I wasn't overly wowed with the demo, and that means I'll probably pick it up on sale. If they're talking about this, then more than likely I'm actually going to be more along the lines of, well, you know what, I'll probably just wait 3 or 4 years until there's an ultimate pack with all the heroes just in one go. So it might be a long time before I actually play this game.
Yeah, see, maybe it's part of running a Disney gaming website is that kind of thing of like, ooh, my eyes went, yay, this is great. Content, constant content dripping in, reasons to jump back into the game. You know, Season Pass for me would now just be an instant, like, you know, I've even now gone to the other thing of like, where's this deluxe collector's edition in the UK? This is actually for me went the opposite way of going, okay, this is a game that's going to be around for years, adding content. You know, I don't have a problem with that kind of thing of season passes and extra content being added later on. You know, $20 for the season. I mean, I've nearly picked up Street Fighter V about 3 times because it was dropped down to like $10-12, and then you get all the extra season pass stuff. And you know, that game is something that they want around for a while. Unfortunately, with Street Fighter V, they blew the launch so badly that it's taken them a long time to kind of build up around it. And this whole idea of games as services is something we're going to see a lot more. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is going to be the same thing. You know, even all the big games companies have all turned around and saying I think Ubisoft have been like, we're going to release less games but add more content as we go. Things like Destiny have been doing it. You know, this whole thing of annualized games is like, well, we can just add out content as and when, because I think DLC and the internet have changed how that content gets out. Except for when you move house and you've been disconnected from the internet for 2 weeks, you suddenly realize how frustrating the system is. But generally, you know, I think we are going to see a lot more of this.
Oh yeah, and actually, I have no problem with this in becoming more and more popular. It's just specifically Marvel vs. Capcom, a game I'm already on the kind of like, I'm not all that interested in, so I don't see any reason to jump on it until it's done. But if they were to do the same thing with Battlefront 2, a game that I am very interested in, I will be getting on the first day, if only for the single-player content, then yeah, I'm totally down with that. I would rather buy Battlefront 2 now instead of having to buy Battlefront 3 in 2 years, just get continual content upgrades through that period, even if it costs me another $60, even if it costs me the same price as a full game over the course of a year or two. I'm like, you know what? I've invested this time into Battlefront 2. I've built up my characters, or whatever. I'm totally down with continuing it. Honestly, I would love to see if EA Sports would take this approach with their sports games, so I don't have to buy NHL 18 and 19 and 20 or FIFA 10 and
being a wrestling fan, I have been buying every single wrestling video game since WrestleMania Challenge on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I have brought probably close to 30 plus WWE video games. And so that whole thing of like season passes and stuff, and it's like now, the new game's coming out, and it's like you probably could have just taken 2017 and just added changed the costumes and done a season pass, and and I think we're going to see more and more of this. That annualized game system with it's like the NFL game, Madden. These are games which almost, to be honest, start feeling like they could become a franchise, and you buy your 2018 season pass to get all that content, rather than just keep buying that. And then as you say, when you go to the game store and they're only offering you 1 penny for the 2015 version of the game because the game is worthless because nobody wants it. So as far as Marvel vs. Capcom goes, I like this idea. The fact that they said that this game is going to be around for years, they want it on the competitive market, the online market. They are looking at these. They don't want just the whole wording of that game, of the way he said it was. This is not a one. Because there's a lot of backlash at the minute of no Fantastic Four, no X-Men. This roster for this game could be hundreds, because they know they've got the characters there.
Well, the question is if they can keep it balanced, because that's always the big thing with fighting games is balance. I recently did a review of Tekken 7, and I noted that it's a very balanced game. There's a lot of you can pick whatever character you want for the most part. There's a couple that are weaker than others, but there's nobody clearly broken. Injustice 2, as much as I love the game, there are a couple of characters that are definitely broken, and if you face one of them in a multiplayer fight, you might as well just concede. So if they're going to if they're going to continue,
they'll tweak them as and when if they find that. Usually they.
Oh yeah, of course. These companies, especially if they're releasing new content, are going to constantly be updating and making sure that everything stays, relatively balanced. Because you don't want to lose players because they don't want to face off against the Iron Man, Mega Man team because you're just going to lose automatically. I don't know. Based on the demo, it seems fairly balanced, but just pick two of the characters.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what they do with this. I think Marvel vs. Capcom. The only trouble is for me, as I did wonder of is the Capcom back catalogue of characters big enough? Because Marvel, they could have done this on their own. We've seen it with Marvel Puzzle, other Marvel games. There's so many that they can do it with. The Capcom side seems a little bit lax to not being a Capcom fan. I did actually decide the other day that I'm gonna, before the game comes out, I'm gonna play a few of the big Capcom games to kind of refresh my memory of what these characters are, because so many of them I've got no idea about. But from the Marvel side, they've got so many characters. I think the season pass, unfortunately, I do know that half the season pass is going to be characters I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, if they wanted to focus primarily on just being like, you know what, we don't have enough Capcom characters, let's just keep throwing out Marvel characters, I'm down for that, because I don't care in the slightest about the Capcom characters, at least in this context. I don't mind playing a Mega Man game. I don't mind, playing some Resident Evils every once in a while. But yeah, I think I'd rather just have a Marvel game. But that's personal preference, of course.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with this one. I in some ways, it's like it's a little bit too early for them to kind of maybe sort of say what this content's going to be. They had the E3 stuff, they had the story demo come out, so some people say it backfired by people being able to play it and they didn't like it and stuff, and the graphics don't look quite right, and they're going to make some changes to Chun-Li and stuff. But as a whole, I think this game is going to be interesting to see what they do with long term. I think we're like, I know with Injustice 2, they want to put this on the fighting esport market, and they want to keep. But for me, that's they're like these DLC packs and stuff. The way they're doing it, it's going to be interesting to see how this works. I mean, because to be honest, it's not. Street Fighter V has done it where they did like year 2. They need to add story mode. They maybe need to add new content. Because if it's just new characters all the time, you need more than that. Overwatch has proven you can keep adding characters, but you need to add maps, and So hopefully, then with Marvel vs Capcom, you also get new locations and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great having characters. Like I'm loving that Injustice 2 is adding new characters and stuff. But if there's no context to the characters, or if there's nothing new to do with the characters, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
So
I did just know. So my neighbours decided to start cutting their grass. That's what we're a little bit.
I was wondering what that was.
It's like I am right next to a school, so they must be cutting the grass in the school now. But it definitely seems to be this thing of the services are something that's going to be sticking around. I think Marvel vs. Capcom is. When I hear stuff, it's that they did it with the last game, but it was like 10 years ago, so they've moved on from that. I think they've probably learned a lot of mistakes from Street Fighter V, and are probably going to, this whole thing about having a story mode and a single campaign. I think they should do what they do with Marvel with the Contest of Champions, having these little events and little stories, because they don't really need it's that weird thing of like, if you change the story and just put a bit of text and a bit of, you can create an entire new thing, and you're just still fighting the same characters, but it feels different.
Yeah, giving it context, giving it a purpose goes so far towards making it worthwhile. Even if it's just, Wolverine comes as a DLC character, and in addition to unlocking Wolverine, you get just a 20-minute, arcade battle style that you can go through. You end up fighting against Chun-Li, you end up fighting against, Magneto and Ultron and all this stuff, and just like at the end of it, you get a little text thingy scrolling across the screen. Wolverine discovered that the adamantium poisoning was cured because his healing factor is working again, etc., etc. Even if you're not a single player gamer, even if you end up just being like, cool, I did it, and now I'm off to play multiplayer and kick people's butts with Wolverine, it gives you that little bit of extra value that makes it worthwhile.
I think there's just been this big thing of this sweeping thing of online play, that there's a massive market for it, and people are invested in multiplayer games for so much longer. But I think they also found, and I think Street Fighter V was a prime example, that Star Wars Battlefront had the same issue. They all thought that the industry was going in this online mode, and those games very much kicked it back and went. People were like, no, I want single player too. I don't. It's not an either or. I want. Multiplayer was always what you added onto the game afterwards to give longevity. And I think they always Disney Infinity did the same thing, where they would sit there and go, most of our players play this. They put 10 hours into story mode and 100 hours into online play. So why do we bother with the 10 hours? Just give them the 100 hours. Like, because they need the 10 hours to get invested into it to play the game. If you don't do the 10 hours, you just jump into the first hour and go, this is awful, I'm getting out. And the story modes are important, and I think Marvel vs. Capcom has learned a lot from Street Fighter V mistakes, and Battlefront 2 are going to be doing the same thing with their service as well.
Yeah, it's very important for the bean counters to look at the data and go, okay, 90% of our players are playing multiplayer, 10% of our players are single player only. Well, let's just focus on the 90%. Well, you know what? 10% is still a lot of players when you're selling millions of copies. And we saw this plenty of times with Disney Infinity, where one of the number one questions I was asked as part of a fan site was, why can't I use my playset from 2.0 in 3.0? And if you asked, John Vignacchi or any of those guys to be like, well, wouldn't you prefer us to be working on our resources on these things? Well, I'm getting asked this question enough that
Yeah.
no, I think you might want to actually consider putting resources on this. Of course, it's now a completely moot point, but it's like, listen to your fans, not just what the data is telling you. Obviously, listening just to your fans is a terrible idea because
you'll be broke and gone out of business.
you'll be gone immediately. Because if you listen to fans, you're going to listen to the 5% vocal minority that exists on the internet. But you still need to listen to them because they're the ones who are, pushing the conversation. They're the ones who are encouraging other people to buy it on their own merits, and they're the ones doing it the most loudly. So one fan online in the echo chamber still might account for another 10, 15, 20 people once you do the whole pyramid bit, being like, yeah, he told a friend, and that friend told a friend, and that told a friend, and now you've got 20 sales. Not to make it into a multi-level marketing scheme. That's obviously not how this stuff works. But, don't discount what people are telling you in favor of just what the bean counters. It's got to be an amalgam of everything.
But no, it's definitely interesting to see what they're doing with Marvel vs. Capcom being the idea that this is going to be a service and a year's things. Going to be interesting what news comes out because we've got San Diego Comic-Con, we've got D23 Expo before the game launches, so we're sort of going to learn a little bit more about what's coming up. But on that note, guys, I'd love to know what you guys think of this plan of a multi-year system for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. The Infinite, I mean, what's wrong with using Infinity or Infinite in a name of a brand that's going to be around for a long time? Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it could be Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite next.
Yeah, 2.0. But yeah, on that note, guys, let us know what you guys are thinking. Get in touch with us on the different social medias or comment below. Hit that subscribe button. You can leave us a review on the audio versions as well if you're there. And finally, we are giving away Cars Free Driven to Win. Going to be ending this weekend. So if you haven't already done that, check us out over at disgaming.com/giveaway. James, where can they find you?
You can find me at heroiclegacy.com.
And on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. We shall see you guys soon. Laters.
Later.